Hey, Kim, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we get to interview you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Well, thanks, Courtney. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm Kim A. Larson. I use my middle initial A because my name is very common, as you know. I live in Moorhead, Minnesota with my loving husband, Chuck. We have two grown sons who live out of state, unfortunately. And the oldest son just had his first child, our sweet baby granddaughter, Colette. But I've been a grandma to 12 step grandchildren for 27 years. My husband is a little bit older than I am. And as a writer, I write in many genres. I have a dozen poems and short stories published in regional anthologies. In 2020, I published a devotional style Bible study titled Unraveling Fairy Tales, Learning to Live Happily Ever After. And my debut picture book, Boat Wont Float, was released October 1st of 2024.
Love that. I would love if you could tell us more about what your books are about.
Well, Goat's Boat Won't Float is about the awkward yet sincere friendship between a fainting goat who topples over when scared, clunk, and an excitable turkey who can't help but cause trouble. It's the first book in the series, and Goat and Turkey go to buy oats. Goat loads too many oats in his boat, and it begins to sink. When a nearby tugboat tries to help, not even Goat's signature earmuffs can save him from Turkey's nervous antics.
Love that. What inspired you to write your book?
My grandchildren's fainting goats inspired the character in this book. I fell in love with them the minute I saw them. But the story itself was inspired by a webinar I took. I'm an avid learner, so I watch many webinars, and this one was about an early reader series. So Anne Ingalls had a webinar on through SCBWI. SCBWI is Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And so I took a webinar in 2020 for early readers. And many of the early readers use sight words, which are common words for kids to recognize without sounding them out. So I bought the children's writer's book to know what words I should use. And on the kindergarten list was the word goat. So I knew I had my main character. I had also written a picture book starring a fainting goat that was a detective prior to this. And here's a helpful tip for beginning writers. Publishers often have a non compete clause in their contracts, meaning you can't publish another book with a similar character. So, my Goat Detective story, which is one of my favorites, can't be published until this series has run its course.
Love that. When writing your book, who are you thinking of when it comes to who your book is for?
But it's a hardcover picture book, so it's for children of all ages, 3 to 7 typically. But as an early reader, kids who are just learning to read and who want to tackle a book on their own should find it an easy and fun read. One Goodreads reviewer said, "It resonates so well with my beginning reader who also does not like loud noises. He gets goat and he loves that he can read this big book all by himself." And that was so touching for me to have a review that spoke to what the intent of the book was.
Love that. How long have you been writing and what made you really sit down and start?
I've always loved to journal, so if you count that, I've been writing since I was a teen. But my motivation to write for others came after having children. I love the love that I experienced for my sons is a big part of my spiritual and writing journey. As a parent, I recognized how much God loves us as His children. So that's what I initially wanted to write about. Thus, the Bible study that I wrote that took me over 20 years to finish. I also enjoyed making up bedtime stories for my boys, of which they were the stars, of course. And as they got older, I wanted them to read books with Christian values. That may partially explain why I've written in so many genres. But I also feel like it's been a calling to write, and I've been blessed to being writing full time since 2010. Before that, I was a mortgage loan officer and I wrote part time, taking one day off a week and on weekends.
Amazing. What is your schedule like when you are writing a book?
I usually am sitting at my desk every morning by 9 a.m., going through emails and reading blog posts. I like to keep up on the industry. There's so many other tasks that writers have to do. So I'll be sending out query letters for publishers to see if they're interested in any of my stories. You actually need an agent to submit to the bigger publishing houses. So I'll be querying agents also to see if they'll represent my work. I'm in critique groups, and so we'll exchange stories throughout the week, and I'll be critiquing stories. I also spend time with marketing now that I have a book out, and I have blog interviews and podcasts like this that I'm preparing for. And I do manage to write a few hours every day, revising or creating new stories.
Love that. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
Oh, I wish there were some magic thing that would help stay focused, but I am blessed to have my own office, so that helps where I am exclusively writing. The computer is a necessity, so I use a laptop because I have fibromyalgia. So I set it on my lap and I hook a monitor to it, so I'm all ergonomically correct. And so that's about it for necessities.
Amazing. What is your favorite writing snack and drink?
I actually enjoy a cup of sweet and spicy tea after lunch as a dessert with a homemade cookie that I make with sweet potatoes and garbanzo bean flour. I try and stay healthy, or I'll have pumpkin seeds or just a little afternoon snack.
Love that. What type of books do you personally enjoy reading?
For most of my life, I've read Christian nonfiction. But since I started writing fiction, I read in the genre that I'm writing. So the first novel I wrote was a YA novel. So I read a lot of YA back in 2012. I really enjoyed YA. Then I wrote a new adult novel. Those were a little harder to find in the day back in 2014. And then in 2016, I really went to town on my Bible study. I had been reading Bible studies forever, so that wasn't as difficult. Then in 2018,
2018.
I
I
started writing Kidlit exclusively. So I'm usually reading picture books or chapter books or middle grade novels now.
love that. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
I do give credit to my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Zimmerman, because I was a reluctant reader. And she introduced me to books like The Boxcar Children by Gertrude Chandler Warner, From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Koningsberg, and Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. But there was a big gap between grade school and having children when I felt called to write. So I was doing a lot of Beth Moore Bible studies, and that probably influenced me to a great degree.
Love that. What type of books did you grow up reading? Did you have an all-time favorite?
No, I really didn't. I wasn't much of a reader. So I guess I don't have a series other than those that I listed that I grew up reading. And then as an adult, I read a lot of nonfiction.
On the other side, touching on being an adult, what are your favorite series or authors that if they come out with something, you automatically grab it?
Oh, I'm probably not good in this area. I don't have favorites. I just been so all over the board, uh, just exploring new genres and reading. I guess in picture books, if Doreen Cronin came out with a new book, I loved her series of Click Clack Moo or Mo Willems' Elephant and Piggy. So I I guess as an adult, I'm still reading picture books.
Love it. What would you tell someone just starting out with reading again?
From my experience, I would say just find a genre that you connect with. So explore a lot of different things. Middle grade and YA are also popular with a lot of older adult readers. I think it's their wholesome content and just easy reads. So I that's where I would gravitate toward.
Love it. On the other side of that, what would you tell someone just starting to write their own book?
I would say write because you love to write and don't ever lose that joy of writing. It's a tough road. There's a long learning curve, at least there was for me, maybe not for everyone. But I think that I could speak for everyone to say that you're going to face a lot of rejection if you want to get traditionally published. So you'll need to learn to persevere. Self publishing is always an option. And so look into that. Make sure your book is ready and never stop learning.
Love that. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
Oh, those who probably don't know me would be surprised that I like to experiment. Well, maybe after hearing this podcast, you already know that I do experiment with a lot of writing, but I found it interesting looking back on my own self how much I do like to experiment. So I'll try new recipes. I'll tweak my baking. My husband always makes a joke that says, that nothing ever turns out the same because I'm always tweaking it, trying to make it a little bit better. So that this is the sweet potato with garbanzo bean flour cookie recipe that's my favorite. That one I probably have stuck with now that I've perfected it.
Love that. Is there anything you would like to say or add?
Well, I guess I didn't highlight the fact that writers need critique partners. They need groups who will read their writing. Nothing comes out perfect the first time. As a writer, you don't realize you haven't put something on the page or that there's that something else needs to happen. And your critique partners are invaluable. So I would suggest that everyone who wants to be a writer find those people who can give you constructive feedback and just know that the revision is part of the process and it's actually where a lot of the work and magic happens is by getting that feedback and making your story even better.
Love that. Where's the best place for readers to find your books? I know some readers love signed copies. Is that an option and the best place to connect with you?
My website is kimalarson.com, so you'll find links to my social media presence there. If a reader is looking for my books, they are in anywhere books can are sold. Specifically with the Goat's Boat Won't Float, there is a bookstore in Owatonna, where I'm from, that will have some signed copies. The Little Professor. It's an indie bookstore back home. And Ferguson's Books in West Fargo, which is a neighboring town in where I live now, will also have some signed copies if they're interested.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're so grateful that we got to interview you. We'll be sure to drop those links in the show notes. That way, everyone can find you. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Courtney. It was a pleasure.